Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Joey Dwyer here on the floor at Memorial Gymnasium after Vanderbilt's 66-65 win over Tennessee. About an hour ago, that corner over there, Tyrin Lawrence iced this one, and it was a night that kind of felt perfect for Jerry Stackhouse, felt perfect for Vanderbilt. He confirmed after the game that this was the biggest win of his tenure in his mind, and hard to argue that point. It felt like a week ago there were a bunch of questions of, did Jerry Stackhouse lose the locker room? How does Vanderbilt respond to this? Is this a team that's going to kind of go off the rails? And it's responded with a win at Ole Miss, or a win here against Ole Miss on Saturday, and then a win against a team that they hadn't beaten 11 games, and frankly a rivalry that felt like it was completely lopsided. It was an 11-game losing streak for Vanderbilt that hadn't won since 2017 against Tennessee. Tennessee came into this game sixth in the country, and Vanderbilt came into this game, felt like really just aiming for a moral victory, aiming to stay in this game. Vanderbilt certainly didn't have that feel tonight, though. It felt like, really from about halftime, it felt like Vanderbilt wasn't going to lose this game. It felt like this was their game and they were going to take it, and Jordan Wright talked about that after the game. It just felt like Vanderbilt really knew that this was their game. They knew they could compete with this team. They belonged with this team after the first game at Knoxville, and certainly did that tonight. And Tyrin Lawrence was tremendous, not only just on the buzzer beater where everybody was on this court about an hour ago. Just felt like Tyrin Lawrence really had it going tonight. He was working in isolation. He was working on the catch. He caught that alley-oop that really fired the crowd up early on and propelled Vanderbilt to some momentum throughout the late first half. Just felt like Tyrin Lawrence had it all going today. And right now, you can't write a positive story about Vanderbilt without mentioning Tyrin Lawrence, and certainly a testament to his development throughout the years. Last year averaged, I think, under 4 points a game. This year it's averaging well north of double digits, and has games like this in some of Vanderbilt's biggest games, has 19 points tonight's efficient, really firing on all cylinders. And then obviously as time expires, Tyrin Lawrence catches it in the corner, and I don't think anybody on the team, or I don't think there's anybody on the team right now that Jerry Stackhouse would rather have shooting that shot. It felt like this was really the perfect storm for Jerry Stackhouse, especially that last possession. It felt like that's the guy he wants the ball in the hands of. It's Stackhouse's play. It's against the rival that Stackhouse has never beaten. Just felt like a perfect night for him. I don't think he could have drawn it up any better. It certainly felt like he thought that in the press conference. It just, after the biggest loss of his tenure points-wise, and maybe the most important loss of his tenure points-wise, feels like this team's going off the rails a little bit, like I said. And they respond with 2 straight wins, and one of them is the biggest win of his tenure. It's really not up for debate. There's a few other games that you could maybe consider, but this is one of those where it's bigger than just beating a ranked team. It's a rivalry game against probably your biggest rival, who you've lost 11 straight to. It feels like the gap is about as big as it's ever been between the teams, and Vanderbilt comes out and beats them. Just a tremendous win, especially considering where the program was about a week ago, where all types of rumors were flying about, does Stack have the locker room? Is Stack going to have his job in a few months? He certainly helped his case tonight, and I don't know if it's going to make or break based off one game, just like it wasn't going to last week, but it certainly helps his case, because you look at all those questions about how the locker room was going to respond. The locker room responded positively, to say the least. This is probably the hardest they played all year. Maybe Arkansas was another one of those games, but there really weren't many games throughout the year that were better than this for Vanderbilt. They played their tail off all night, and it was really the main guys who had carried them throughout the year, carrying them again. Ezra Monyon had some huge baskets down the stretch. Jordan Wright really stepped up in the second half. Tyrin Lawrence obviously was the go-to guy, and I don't think Jerry Stackhouse would have picked another guy to be the go-to guy. It was just a perfect storm for Vanderbilt tonight. And we're not even mentioning Liam Robbins yet, who had 14 and 9. Just a tremendous night for Vanderbilt, and one that doesn't seem like any of them will forget. The only time at Memorial Gymnasium I've seen all the students on the floor. Even after Arkansas, they were contained enough to stay in the student section, but tonight it was just electric. A lot of Tennessee fans, probably mostly Tennessee fans, but Memorial Magic felt real tonight for the first time since I've been on the beat. Obviously, Arkansas was probably the most impactful crowd, but it didn't feel like it did tonight. Tonight was just a tremendous atmosphere, even though it felt kind of like a neutral site at times with the Tennessee fans. Vanderbilt fans were loud. They were into this game, and again, just a tremendous win for Vanderbilt. Tyrin Lawrence was the big story. Jerry Stackhouse and his just kind of how this game worked out for him in terms of it being his guy at the end of the game, who he talked earlier in the week about being almost a father figure to the guy he mentored, the guy who he developed into one of his better players, hits the game-winning shot on a play that he kind of wants to be a microcosm of their offense. As Romagnon gets downhill, gets his feet in the paint, draws some defenders, and kicks it out for a wide-open shooter. That's what Jerry Stackhouse has wanted from his offense all year. That's the blueprint for them to be successful offensively. And his team did it in the last possession of one of their biggest games of the season, which turned out to be the biggest win of his tenure in his mind. So just a tremendous win for Vanderbilt. You can't say enough about how big this win was for them, and really for Jerry Stackhouse in particular. Moving forward, how does this team respond to this, I think, is probably the biggest question that's going to determine kind of the future of this program, whether they can retain most of this roster, whether Stackhouse keeps his job. It's going to be, how do they respond to a game like this? Can they go to Florida and win? Can they go to Florida and compete? We'll see about that, but there's certainly things that you'd like to hang your hat on if you're Vanderbilt after this, and you'd like to think, hey, we can beat anybody now. And Tyrin Lawrence said that in the presser. Might have been Jordan Wright. I think it was Tyrin Lawrence though, but basically the point he was getting at is, if we can have the week we had and we can go play Tennessee, a team we've lost to 11 straight times, a team we lost to earlier in the year, who can't we beat? And I think Alabama's the answer to that, but Vanderbilt won't see Alabama the rest of the way. So certainly some positive signs for this team. You don't want to get ahead of yourself and say, well, they're going to make a big late season push now. It's just one game, just like Alabama was just one game. We made a big deal out of that one, so we're obviously going to make a big deal out of this one. But this one feels bigger than beating your rival. It feels like there's a lot more at play here, and a lot more, especially with Jerry Stackhouse, that kind of comes to mind here in terms of just his team, the backing he has. And I think some people are certainly going to get back on board after this one. It's up to you as to whether you're back on board, but I think he's going to gain a lot of people after tonight. And they talked a lot about positive momentum when talking about kind of the future of the program. If they can finish the year with positive momentum, maybe things stay pretty similar to how they are now. This is certainly positive momentum. I don't think you can get much of a better example of positive momentum in college basketball than beating your rival on your home floor, who is a top 10 opponent, and doing it on a buzzer beater by the guy who is really a testament to your development. I feel like I keep repeating it, but it was just the perfect storm for Vanderbilt. There was confidence oozing from this team all night, and I hadn't felt that about this team really all year. It felt like they were joining at the hip. They played together, and we hadn't seen that a whole lot. We'd seen a lot of selfish play recently. We haven't seen the ball move like it did tonight. Shooters were wide open all night, and see how many threes Vanderbilt had. I can't believe I don't know this. Vanderbilt outshot Tennessee 10-7 from beyond the arc, and that's the recipe for success for Vanderbilt. We talked about it all season. Got to outshoot teams like Tennessee, and this is the number one defense in the country. I can't believe I haven't mentioned that yet. They are ranked number one by Ken Pom in defensive efficiency. Vanderbilt hit 10 threes on them, and that's the recipe to beat a team like this. It's a recipe to beat Alabama, although that's going to be a little bit more difficult for a team like Vanderbilt, who doesn't have the personnel that Alabama has. To combat what Tennessee wants to do to you defensively, you got to open up the floor, and Vanderbilt didn't do a phenomenal job of that in Knoxville. They hit a few threes. Noah Shelby comes to mind in particular that night, but Vanderbilt hit 10 threes tonight and opened up the driving lanes for guys like Tyrin Lawrence, opened up the switches so he wouldn't get swarmed at the rim. I think the biggest kind of difference I saw tonight as compared to the first game was when Tyrin Lawrence went to the basket early on in Tennessee, he just got swallowed at the rim. And tonight, when he went to the basket, the floor is a little more open, he's a little more confident, and would go in and actually score. He'd finish around the rim. Just felt like a complete 180 as to what we saw in Knoxville a few weeks ago, and really this whole team, it felt like they belonged in Knoxville, but really never felt like they were going to finish that game. Today, it felt like they were going to finish that game really throughout the entire night. And the Memorial Magic was present tonight, although there were a lot of Tennessee fans. You can't understate that. This building was mostly orange, and if they had lost, it would have just felt like kind of the same story again. They've competed with Tennessee, they're right there, but they didn't do it. There's still distance between them, and there still is distance between them. Tennessee obviously has this rivalry right now. Tennessee had won 11 straight heading into this game. Tennessee's still the top 10 team. Vanderbilt's the team that probably won't make the NCAA tournament unless this continues throughout the rest of the year, but there's certainly things to hang your hat on if you're Vanderbilt, and a lot of positives from tonight, and can't be understated. It's not often that we completely shift our coverage to talking about the win, and maybe the implications the win has are obviously always talked about, but you always find some negatives. Tonight really weren't that many. Vanderbilt shared the ball. They defended their tail off. They played with intensity. Ole Miss, I kind of picked that game apart because it felt like Vanderbilt could have been a lot better that day. But today, they beat a top 10 team who scored higher than it had the last few games. So there's a ton to like from Vanderbilt tonight, and a lot they can build on. Really, what the future of this program depends on is how this team plays down the stretch here. The next 2 or 3 weeks are probably the most important of Stackhouse's tenure. Can they go get a win on the road at LSU, a win at South Carolina to kind of boost that record? They're 5-6 in the league now, and I think if you told me that 2 months ago, I would have been completely shocked, but that's the reality right now. And Vanderbilt's certainly in position to be in position, maybe not for the NCAA tournament, but in terms of maybe finding a way to feel positive about the end of the season. If you can go get one more ranked win, if you can win the games you're supposed to on the road, you could almost have a winning record in the league, and I didn't think that was possible a few weeks ago. Maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I think I am, but a lot of reason for optimism right now for Vanderbilt, and I think Vanderbilt's got to enjoy this because come out on Saturday and maybe things aren't the same, but certainly a lot to hang your hat on right now if you're Vanderbilt. So I appreciate you guys watching. Just a tremendous night for Vanderbilt basketball, and one that we hadn't experienced all season. So thank you guys for watching. God bless. Peace.